The dynamic between Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White is very interesting because clearly it's a relationship with a basis of respect. I mean, when Stephanie White was hired, Clark was thrilled, super excited. And coach said all the right things about coming in and coaching the Fever and coaching Caitlin Clark. Then fairly early in the season, I would say there was a bit of a philosophical divide, but it never got to be completely worked out, right? And it wasn't as if they were at odds, but I noticed when they would talk about things, and for instance,
wait, what? Caitlin Clark fired? The face of the Indiana Fever, the generational talent who packed arenas and shattered viewership records. Suddenly out? After all that tension with head coach Stephanie White, did things finally explode behind closed doors? Hold on, because what actually happened is somehow even more shocking than the headlines suggest. And the real story behind this supposed firing reveals a power struggle, a philosophical war, and a clash of two championship minds that nobody saw coming. Let's rewind to where this all started, because the relationship between Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White was supposed to be a dream pairing. When the Fever announced White as their new head coach, Clark was over the moon. She went on record saying she was thrilled, super excited.
When they would talk about things, and for instance, when Caitlin Clark had come back from one of her injuries and Ari McDonald was there, and they were asking about playing together, and Clark referenced some of the talking points Stephanie White has made, like being a better screener, about playing off ball, but then she, reiterated that she's at the best with the ball in her hands. And that reminded me of when I was there for the Liberty game, the first Liberty game that Clark got hurt in, not the one that she came back and exploded in. And before that game,
genuinely pumped about the hire. White, for her part, said all the right things. She talked about embracing her superstar, building around Clark's unique talents, creating something special in Indianapolis. The media loved it. Fans were ecstatic. This looked like the perfect marriage of player and coach, the foundation of a dynasty in the making. But here's the thing about honeymoon periods in professional sports. They don't last. And in this case, it was shockingly short-lived, because almost immediately after the season tipped off, a philosophical divide started emerging between these two brilliant basketball minds. It wasn't loud at first.
And turned it into like Stephanie White will destroy Caitlin Clark and all that. We never got a chance to see them completely gel. When Clark had come back, even when she was playing hobbled before the groin injury that ultimately ended her season, when the ankle injury compounded it, the Fever were rolling. They had won a couple of games in a row there, but not only just did they win them, they looked like a machine. And that was with Clark struggling to shoot because she was obviously hobbled with injuries. But then when the Fever go on and they win without Caitlin Clark, and clearly Stephanie White proves she's a hell of a coach.
It wasn't explosive, but it was there, simmering beneath the surface, a subtle crack in the very foundation of their partnership. And that crack would eventually become a chasm that played out on national television for millions to see. The issue was fundamental, almost primal in its simplicity. How should Caitlin Clark operate on a basketball court? It's a question that seems ridiculous on its face because we've all watched Clark dominate with the ball in her hands, orchestrating offense, hitting impossible shots, threading passes through microscopic windows. That's who she is. That's what makes her generational. But Stephanie White had a different vision.
Right? So it's just intriguing because they never got a chance to fully flesh out their on-court relationship. They have a great off-court relationship, and so much has been made of their relationship since without us having a chance to actually see the substance. And then when Stephanie White says anything, it gets run with, like when she had talked about how important Kelsey Mitchell was to the team.
A more nuanced approach. She wanted Clark to develop her off-ball game, to become a better screener, to learn when to relinquish control and trust her teammates. These weren't unreasonable requests from a coaching perspective. They were the demands of a coach trying to build a complete championship caliber system. But Clark wasn't buying it. Not completely. And the first public manifestation of this divide came when she returned from an injury and was asked about playing alongside point guard Erica Wheeler. Clark paid lip service to White's directives, acknowledged the coaching points, said the right things about being coachable. But then she added something that sent shockwaves through the basketball world. She said, And I'm paraphrasing here.
Was to the team. I don't even forget the exact comments, but it was the most innocent comment ever, especially when they're trying to re-sign Kelsey Mitchell in free agency. But it's like, well, she didn't say Caitlin Clark was the be-all, end-all of everything all the time, and therefore she, hates her. But regardless, Stephanie White was on with Sue Bird on her Bird's Eye View podcast and specifically talked about Caitlin Clark and said some things that I think fans will like to hear, especially coming from her.
How important was it
that she understood what Coach White wanted, that she'd work on those things, but then she doubled down hard. I'm at my best with the ball in my hands, she declared. Simple, direct, unambiguous. That wasn't just a player expressing a preference. That was a challenge. That was a direct counterpoint to everything White had been coaching. And when those words hit the airwaves, the tension became palpable, undeniable. Fans immediately escalated the situation. Social media exploded with takes about how White was going to destroy Clark's game, how she was trying to stifle this absolutely unique generational talent, how the Fever were making a catastrophic mistake trying to change their superstar. The scrutiny became intense, suffocating even. Every comment from either party was analyzed under a microscope, dissected for hidden meanings, blown up into full-blown dramatic narrative.
All the reasons.
I mean, really important. I'd had just a little bit of a relationship with Caitlin from calling her games a number of times, when she was in college, but it was very important. Look, she's obviously the centerpiece of everything that we do. And most importantly for me was just connecting and building trust. I don't know how she does what she does and handles it so gracefully.
And here's what made it all so fascinating. The team was actually rolling. Before Clark's season-ending groin injury, the Fever looked like a machine. They were winning games with Clark playing hobbled, struggling to shoot because of various injuries. The foundation White was building was clearly strong, but that almost made the philosophical clash more pronounced. Because if the system was working, why was Clark still publicly pushing back? Why was she subtly resisting even when politely acknowledging White's suggestions? The answer reveals something profound about elite competitors. Clark has this Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant DNA running through her. She's a psycho competitor, someone who believes in her own vision with such fierce conviction that any attempt to limit or reshape that vision feels like an attack on her very identity. Remember when she compared herself to Steph Curry, talking about how nobody tells Steph not to shoot those long bombs? That wasn't just playful confidence. That was an inherent, almost instinctual resistance to being pigeonholed or limited by anyone's vision other than her own. White, meanwhile, was asserting her own authority in increasingly firm ways. She went on Sue Bird's podcast and delivered what can only be described as a definitive snapback, an unwavering articulation of her coaching philosophy. She acknowledged Clark as the centerpiece of everything the Fever do, both as a player and as a business driver. Nobody was disputing Clark's importance. But then White laid down a foundational principle that cut through all the noise. I'm a firm believer that you have to coach and challenge your best players. It was a powerful declaration. Clark's superstar status did not exempt her from rigorous coaching. It didn't protect her from being pushed, molded, challenged. White was setting a boundary, establishing that she was the coach and her vision mattered. But the most telling moment, the one that revealed the true nature of this clash, came when White admitted something raw and honest. She said, I'm also the same kind of psycho that she is in terms of competitiveness. That right there was everything. This wasn't a coach trying to suppress her star. This was a battle between two elite, championship-obsessed minds who both believed they knew the path to victory. White was essentially saying, I'm your equal in competitive fire, and I'm not backing down. It was a direct challenge, a declaration that they were meeting on equal footing as two people who would sacrifice anything to win. And then came the validation White desperately needed. When Clark went down with her groin injury, ending her season prematurely, the Fever didn't collapse. They didn't spiral into mediocrity. They kept winning. They looked like a well-oiled machine, proving White's coaching prowess beyond any doubt. The system worked without the superstar. The depth was real. The philosophy had substance. And Clark, to her credit, publicly celebrated these victories. She posted supportive messages about White and the team, showing that despite the philosophical tensions, there was genuine respect and a shared goal of winning championships. This is what made their relationship so endlessly fascinating. Off the court, they had what everyone described as a good relationship. There was trust developing beneath the surface tension. White herself said that earning Clark's trust was absolutely essential before she could effectively challenge her star player. And that trust did seem to be building, even as the public watched this captivating clash of philosophies play out. It was a profound paradox. Two people who respected each other deeply, who shared the same ultimate goal, but who fundamentally disagreed about the path to get there. White's demands weren't arbitrary. She wanted Clark to make significant improvements in her off-ball play, to become a more dangerous catch-and-shoot threat, to learn the subtle art of knowing when to dominate and when to let others shine. These were fundamental shifts that required Clark to evolve beyond her long-established ball-dominant identity. For White, this wasn't about diminishing Clark's greatness. It was about unlocking an even higher level, about creating a championship system where Clark could excel individually while also elevating everyone around her. But Clark's resistance made sense too. She dominated at every level, playing her way. She'd revolutionized women's basketball with the ball in her hands. Asking her to change felt like asking Picasso to paint by numbers. The media ran with every perceived slight. When White mentioned Kelsey Mitchell's importance to the team, headlines screamed about Clark being undermined. When White talked about the team's success without Clark, it was twisted into a suggestion that maybe the Fever were better off without their superstar. The environment became a minefield of public opinion that White had to navigate with surgical precision. Through all of this, one element remained constant. Both women were committed to winning. White's performance navigating Clark's injuries, managing egos, and guiding the team to success was remarkable. It served as a silent yet incredibly profound snapback at any critics who questioned her methods. She'd proven she was a hell of a coach, someone who could build a winning culture and a functional system regardless of who was on the court. But here's the lingering question that makes this story so compelling going forward. Can these two brilliant minds truly meld their philosophies? Can White's unyielding demands for growth coexist with Clark's fierce self-belief and instinct to dominate? The potential for a dynasty is absolutely palpable. The pieces are in place. The talent is undeniable. But championship teams require alignment, a shared vision executed with precision and trust. What we witnessed during that truncated season was an epic, unresolved drama between two competitive titans who share mutual respect but operate from fundamentally different basketball philosophies. Every interaction, every quote, every subtle undertone of resistance or assertion of authority added another layer to this captivating narrative. The stage is set for something truly special when Clark returns healthy and White has a full season to implement her vision. Will we see a legendary dynasty emerge from this crucible of competing philosophies? Or will the tension continue, creating a captivating clash that defines the Fever's future? One thing is certain, nothing about Caitlin Clark has been fired, except maybe the intensity of this power struggle. The real story isn't about endings. It's about two championship minds learning to coexist, to blend brilliance with systematic excellence, to find common ground in the relentless pursuit of victory. The future of the Indiana Fever hangs in the balance, suspended between the promise of greatness and the reality that even mutual respect can't always bridge a philosophical divide. What happens next will determine whether this tension becomes the foundation of something legendary or the fault line that prevents greatness from fully manifesting. And basketball fans everywhere will be watching every moment of this unfolding drama.